Hello, everybody. Welcome. We have a few more people coming in. I'm just going to get started in about 30 seconds. So if you need to use the bathroom, do it quick or grab some coffee. We're excited. Welcome, welcome. We are going to get started in a few seconds. So thanks all for joining. Get my dad on the screen here. Cool.
Hey, Spence.
Hello. All right, let's dive in. First of all, thank you all for joining this. This is our first webinar that we've done, and it's kind of fun that my dad and I get to do this together. We're so passionate about this vanilla project and all the work that we're doing on Project Canaan. So first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to join us. We're really excited that you're here. Before we dive in, my name is Spencer Maxwell. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm the Director of Marketing at Heart for Africa, and I'm based just outside Detroit, Michigan. And today I'll be interviewing Ian Maxwell, who, as I mentioned, is my dad, and he's the CEO of Heart for Africa and lives in Eswatini, Africa. Eswatini, if you're not familiar with it, is a small landlocked country within South Africa. It used to be called Swaziland, but they changed the name a few years ago, so we got to change some of our banners and signs around the country. But that's where Eswatini is, and he's located there. A few housekeeping things. There's a chat function that we're trying out for this. So in 30 minutes, we're going to do a Q&A. And if you have any questions throughout this discussion, please feel free to add some questions and we'll take some time at the end to answer those. Also, this meeting is recorded and we will be sharing it out afterwards. So if you need to leave early or if you know someone that finds the stuff really interesting, feel free to share it after as well. So for anybody that doesn't know Heart for Africa is a nonprofit organization with the mission of delivering hope to the Kingdom of Eswatini. We do that through fighting hunger, caring for orphans, decreasing poverty, and providing education. So Heart for Africa is based in Atlanta, Georgia, but the main focus of Heart for Africa is through Project Canaan. Project Canaan is a 2,500 acre farm in Eswatini, Africa, and Project Canaan is the home to over 450 children under the age of 14. It employs over 450 people across many initiatives, like the farm, which we're going to talk about today with our Vanilla initiative. We have a Lasito mechanic shop. We have a Kafunza woodworking center, our dairy. There are many projects that are going on Project Canaan. All with the goal of helping us become fully self-sustainable. So we're going to get into vanilla, but it's important to understand why we're talking about vanilla. And it's really around this piece of sustainability. And for us, what that means is that we generate enough revenue on Project Canaan to offset the operational costs of all of the work that Project Canaan is doing. So as you can imagine, we have 450 kids now. We will have hundreds more children come through this program. And we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up to be able to fund the type of lifestyle and the opportunities that we want to get to these kids. So all of that is a roundabout way into why we are so excited about vanilla. So today I'm going to be talking to my dad, and we're going to go through why are we invested in vanilla, where do we see it going for us as well as the market, and then also what are we doing today to actually capitalize on this. So, Dad, welcome. Thanks for joining. How's life in Eswatini?
How is it going in Eswatini? It's going really well. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, it's the end of the day for me today. So it's 5 p.m. my time, but yeah, loving this. This is great.
What's your favorite part about living in Eswatini?
Well, I gotta love the mild winters, first of all. But I think this project has really been just a godsend project, and living with these kids and the people that we're working with, it gets me out of bed every morning quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very fulfilling. So vanilla, let's go back to the beginning. When did we start talking about vanilla, and why have we been so heavily invested in this over the last few years?
Well, a couple of years ago, our farm manager heard about a seminar that the government of Tanzania was putting on and it was all about increasing vanilla production in the country. So he asked me if he could go up to it. He'd pay his own way. He'd go to this. I would just give him the time off. So I said, well, sure. Yeah, that'll be fine. So he went up for 3 days. And he came back and he was really excited about this because vanilla, we grow orchids here and vanilla is an orchid. So he said, we could do this here. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about it. And so he started telling me about it and how vanilla grows and where it needs to grow. And so we basically made a plan and said, okay, we looked at what we could do to grow it, but then we looked at the market to see if the market could sustain it. And yeah, it just seemed like a kind of like a really good opportunity. It was going to take time to get it going because it takes time for vanilla to actually grow and to produce beans. So we started that. That's where the initial genesis of the idea came. So it came through Magenta, our farm manager.
Right. And when we first started talking about vanilla, I know one of the tests that you did was to take some orchids and actually transplant them to a tree on your property to see if they could actually grow and sustain in the climate. How does that work?
So I've become very frugal in my elderly age. I buy my wife orchids now because they're the same cost as cut flowers, but it's in a plant and it lasts for about 3 months with flowers on it. Once the petals fall off of it, what we can do is we take it out and tie it to a tree in a shady part of a tree, and 6 months from now it'll bloom again, and it's really cool. So we have these all over our property. So we know vanilla can grow, or we know orchids can grow outside all year long here. Again, vanilla is an orchid, so we knew that it could grow here. We just need the right locations for it to be planted in.
Sure. So you mentioned the vanilla market as a whole. I want to provide some context to people that aren't familiar, but back in 2017 and previously for many years before that, most of the world's vanilla beans came from Madagascar. In 2017, there was a Category 4 hurricane that hit the island, and it wiped out a significant amount of the vanilla orchids that were growing there, which led prices to skyrocket. So, Dad, can you talk a little bit about how vanilla traditionally grows in places like Madagascar?
Yeah, so vanilla, it's an orchid, but it's really a vine. It climbs and it needs to be in shade. So when in Madagascar, you'll have large trees that they'll have the vanilla bean or the vanilla orchid growing up on it. At one point in the year, depending on your climate and depending on where you're at, the plant will get stressed because you go through a period of drought during the year. And it's right after the rains start coming again that the vanilla plant will flower. And so once it flowers, in our part of the world, there is no natural pollinators for vanilla. The only natural pollinator for vanilla actually exists in Mexico, and it's a little bee. So we don't have it here, so we have to hand pollinate it. So even in Madagascar, they have to hand pollinate all of the vanilla flowers that bloom. Vanilla is tricky because once it flowers, you have 24 hours to pollinate it, or it falls off the vine or off the plant. And you have to wait another year for those same conditions to happen again. So it can be forced or it can be stressed and then it flowers again. So making sure that you pollinate the flower within a 24-hour period of it flowering is critical to the vanilla bean to grow. Once the flower is pollinated, then it takes about almost 9 months for the bean to grow. And at that 9-month period, you don't want the bean to be completely ripened. So you need to harvest that bean and then you need to blanch it in boiling water. And then what that does is it kills off the ripening process. And then it takes another month to convert it from that bean into the vanilla, black vanilla that you buy in the store. And you have to do that by taking it out and it dries in the sun. So it's a curing process that takes about a month to do. So the whole process is about 10 months if you're able to pollinate the flower. So if you miss pollinating the flower, then you have to wait another year. And then even if you do get it pollinated, it takes another 10 months before you actually have the bean.
Right. Not to mention the years before that of the orchid itself just to grow to a point where it can actually produce flowers.
So an orchid could live 10 to 15 years and it just keeps growing. And so once they say around the 4-year mark is when you start getting really decent harvests off the vine.
Okay, and when did we plant our vanilla?
We planted our first quarter of a hectare greenhouse. We planted that in 2023. And
Okay.
we're learning along the way. When Magana came back, he was very excited about this. And so we started planning, where are we going to plant our bananas? Or where are we going to plant our, yeah, there's Magana. Where are we going to plant our vanilla? And he said, Ian, and he's got this very strong accent. He goes, Ian, we need to plant 3,000 banana trees. And I said, why do we have to plant 3,000 banana trees? He goes, because that's where we'll plant the vanilla, in between those trees. So it provides the shade the vanilla bean needs to grow, or the vanilla plant to grow. And I said, okay, so we planted 3,000 banana trees. And that took about a year. And anyways, and then we were bringing cuttings down from Tanzania. And that happened in 2023 as well, at the beginning of 2020, or sort of middle 2023. And then we were propagating all of that. And then Magana comes to me and he says, Ian, I think we need to grow these in the greenhouse. And I said, I just planted 3,000 banana trees. Magana? He goes, no, what I want to do is I want to make this organic vanilla. I said, can't you do it out in the banana trees? He goes, no, I fertilize the bananas. I was like, Magana. But you know what? We haven't had to buy a banana for our
I was going to say, when's the last time?
2024. Yeah, it was 10 years now. So we planted them in the greenhouse. We started off with the first quarter of a quarter hectare greenhouse. And why did we do that? Well, we wanted to make sure we're getting it right, because this is the first time we've done something like this. Maganda had seen in Tanzania, they do grow it outside. So we're not really 100% sure how it was going to grow in that. And I'm glad we did that, because we found out about our greenhouse. We had planted it, well, we had dug channels and we put in organic material. And so all of our vanilla was going to be organic. We're working towards getting organic certification. That'll happen next year. But we planted all these, and they started to grow. Then when it was time to stress them, we were going to stress them in November. So the way you stress the vanilla is we cut off the water to it. And by March, our soil moisture was the same as it was back in November, and we hadn't watered the thing in 3 months. So, or 3.5 months, 4 months. So Magana came to me and he said, I think we have an underground spring underneath our vanilla. Now, we just went through 3 years of drought between 2015 and 2018, and there was no water anywhere. So we built the greenhouse. Anyways, long story short, what we needed to do now in the rest of the 2/3 of the greenhouse was still dig the trenches, but put a vapor barrier in so that we can control the moisture going into those plants. And so you live and learn. It's put us behind. So our first, we were able to the vanilla actually grew pretty quickly, and we were able to stress it in 2024, but it didn't flower the way we were hoping it would flower. So we got about a 10% flowering rate, which was really poor. But we live and learn.
Well, we're learning. We're learning.
We are.
I mean, we didn't go into your background, but originally it is not farming by nature. It is something that you have taken on over the last 15 years, and we are learning every single step. But, you think about the bananas, we planted the vanilla in between, well, we intended to plant the vanilla in between the bananas, which makes sense from growing outside perspective. But like I talked about in Madagascar, when the hurricane came through and it wiped out so much of the vanilla in the global industry, it really makes you consider, if we have greenhouse assets that we could leverage for such a high valuable crop like vanilla, it makes sense. It's hard to plan for a water aquifer to be below said greenhouse before we do it, but we know that now, and it's something we're looking for the next greenhouse that we're currently fundraising for. I have this picture up on the screen, Dad. Can you just, for people that haven't actually walked through the greenhouse, what are we looking at on the right-hand side here? Sure.
So what we're looking at are trellises that we've run the width of our greenhouse. The vanilla is actually growing up the trellis and then it grows back down the trellis, and then goes back up the trellis and goes back down the trellis. So on each pole, we have there's 4 vanilla plants planted at each pole. And so the whole thing is going to look like a hedge once we're a couple of years into this. And then and then we have drip irrigation going down the middle of it. Right now, in the bottom of these, we have sugar beans planted. So it's putting nitrogen into the soil for the vanilla to use. So that's why the cropping down below it looks kind of crowded. But yeah, so the vanilla goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And funnily enough, it only the flowers only come out on the parts that are growing down. So growing up doesn't really do anything, but growing down, it seems that's where the flowers seem to go. And Maganda was very clear on this. This is how it's going to work. So it's going to get crowded in there at some point. But.
Well, for those of you that don't know Maganda, we often refer to him as the plant whisperer, where this guy can get anything to grow anywhere. But having it in a controlled environment like a greenhouse certainly makes that more manageable. So just for anybody on the call that doesn't know as much about the vanilla industry, just a few statistics. I mentioned that hurricane that came through Madagascar. Before that hurricane hit, a pound of vanilla was around $20 US. So for years after that, up until that, it was around 20. The hurricane hit. For the years following that, it went up to about $500 a pound and is now averaging around $250 a pound. There's 2 types of vanilla when you harvest it. There's grade A and grade B vanilla. Grade A are the prime beans that are actually, they have more humidity and they're not as cracked. You would use these beans to scrape out the innards of and create your own vanilla ice cream. Whereas the grade B products are more things that you would make things like vanilla extract from. So that $250 a pound is actually that grade B level. So there are margins here in this industry, but there is a shortage of vanilla all over the world that's going on. So you compile our growing conditions as well as what this market's looking like. And we have a plant whisperer on our property. It just made sense for us to look into this as a serious initiative, especially when we look at the growing demand for vanilla in consumption, so food and beverage, but of course fragrances as well. Apparently there's over 250 different fragrances you can extract from a vanilla bean, from the vanilla talons, supposedly, right? We're not the scientific experts here. Do your own research, but there is a lot of use cases as well as in medicine and pharmacy. So we've been spending a lot of time and resources trying to get this vanilla right. I'm going to share one more picture of what these flowers actually look like. So Dad, we talked about the hand pollination process, and it's very cumbersome. It happens for a 24-hour period. So I would imagine we have people walking up and down those lines every single day during that time frame to be able to come in and do this. So can you walk through like what actually happens here?
Yeah, so if you look at the picture on the right, you'll see a flower, and then behind it, those are buds that have not flowered yet. So you can actually tell when a bud is getting ready to pop. And so you keep an eye out for that. It doesn't like this, it takes time for it to grow out to this point. So you're aware of where these clusters are. And when it does actually flower, you do notice that, like it's quite apparent. You can see that. If you look at the picture on the left, so you give it a little squeeze. You got to actually tear the flower open to pollinate it, and we're using toothpicks. So you got to flip the pestle thing over and squeeze it. And if you've done a really good job, then what'll happen is the flower will stick on the vine, and it'll develop into a bean. If you've done a poor job, then the flower will fall off within 24 hours. So
right.
We've got to train people how to do this. And this is one of the things that our kids are going to learn how to do probably once they're 15 or 16 years old, when they're mature enough to actually go through and do this kind of stuff, because this will pay a living wage for a period of time that this happens. And so it'll flower over about a 6-week period, the whole greenhouse.
Right. That whole opportunity for the kids to get involved with initiatives on the farm, so, or across the property really, but specifically in farming, there are a lot of agricultural demand jobs in the country as well as South Africa. So it's a really good skill for these kids to be learning. On the flip side, it's such an important and valuable crop for us as an organization that we want to make sure that they're at the point that they don't accidentally kill one of the flowers that was going to be blossoming for us. But that comes, and we're going to be training them, and it'll be a really good experience. And they could take this around Eswatini, because as far as I know, there's no other vanilla producers in the country, right?
Yeah, there isn't. The climate all over the country, you can't have any frost. And there are parts of the country that does get pretty cold, and we have had snow in parts of it. But where we are, we've never had frost, and that's why we can grow all these bananas too, because they don't like frost either, or they can't live in an environment where there's frost. So we're in a perfect environment to grow vanilla, and in the controlled environment of the greenhouse as well, we can control the humidity level, and that's key as well. They do like rainforests,
Right.
lots of moisture.
Well, and with the greenhouses, we get all of the solar from the sun, the temperature and the heat that is provided in our country is exactly what the crops need. It's just the humidity of the rainforest that's so successful in Madagascar that we can simulate in the greenhouse, which is a perfect opportunity for us to do that.
Yeah, and we've also put shade net over the top of our greenhouse that filters out about 50% of the sunlight, because, like I said, the orchid doesn't like to grow in direct sunlight.
Right. One of the most fascinating things I find with it is that because it continues to grow, just like your flowers outside your house, every year they come back, for at least 10 to 15 years for the vanilla orchid. But those vines will just keep growing down the greenhouse every single year, up, down, up, down. And so while our first harvest might be 400 grams of vanilla beans from a plant, I know in Tanzania outside, they're able to do pounds of vanilla from a single plant. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Maganda says after about 10 to 12 years, we should be getting about 22 pounds. When we did our numbers and our estimates on our road to sustainability, we were averaging 4.4 pounds, so 2 kilos per plant at the height. So if they do produce more, that's even better. In the greenhouse, we've planted, we haven't finished planting it yet, but there's planting for about 3,200 plants. So when you start doing the numbers on that, it's, you're up to about, it's about 6.2 tons of vanilla out of the one greenhouse.
Right. Which is less than 1% of the world's supply, just for perspective, but would be a significant impact for the opportunities that we could give these kids as they get older. They want to get jobs. They want to start a business, right? How can we have capital to invest in things that these kids want to be doing? We have a few more minutes before we open up for questions. So I want to talk about what we're doing right now. So I know you've been doing some testing. I also want to talk about the still that you get, the classes that we've been taking. Can you go into detail about that?
Yeah. So it's a learning curve for us, for all of us. So we had some vanilla we brought down from Tanzania that we were able to experiment with. We want to get our vanilla extract recipe right, because once you've the way you make vanilla extract is you put vanilla beans into alcohol, and depending on the proof of the alcohol will determine the strength of the vanilla. You can put in less vanilla, you can put in more vanilla, you can put in cut vanilla, you can put in the whole beans, there's a lot of different things. So we experimented with this to just try to get an understanding, or at least get the test going, because the vanilla takes anywhere from 6 months to a year before it's ready to use. The longer you store it, the better, the more flavorful the extract it becomes. Yeah. So one of the things that we were trying to do is saying, okay, well, if we did this, what's the most efficient way of doing this? And so that's where the still comes in. Buying alcohol from the store, you could do that, but that also increases your overall cost. With this still, we went and took a class on how to make alcohol, moonshine, from sugar water and yeast, and Yeah, no, it was really an interesting couple of days. So we've got the still going, and we've got the vanilla. There's Janine there; she's cutting up the beans, and we've got our flasks. And so it was a great experiment. So we have about 2 liters of vanilla extract that we're no 20 liters of vanilla extract that we're making, and we have different proofs of alcohol. They're either cut or whole beans, and we're doing tests on all of those. So yeah, pretty excited about that.
I will say this still is one of the cooler projects that my parents have taken on in these recent years, and I'm looking forward to when you have it all the kinks worked out. Um, just so everyone knows, what's really fascinating about vanilla extract, as my dad mentioned, is that you want a percentage of alcohol between 35 and 65%. And as you get higher to that 65%, the research shows that your vanilla extract will actually extract the vanilla tannins faster. So we have a shorter amount of time that we actually have to sit on it. But if you go over that 65% to more like a rubbing alcohol at 99%, it will actually cook the vanilla. It makes it very bitter. So part of this testing period that we're going through right now is to buy the vanilla beans from the same people that we bought the plants from. It's actually a bourbon style vanilla. Let's buy those beans. Let's start our testing process right now. So that way, when we have our very first harvest next year, we're able to get that stuff dried and then into bottles with the right ratios, with the hope that we can go start selling wholesale and retail, at our local shop, but also to, big buyers some point in the future, right?
That's right.
Yeah. We've talked about a few other types of products. We've talked about vanilla extract. We've talked about vanilla syrup. Powder, salt. Is there one in particular that you find the most interesting because you're a chef yourself and you like to cook?
I find it all really interesting because there's so many things that you can make from vanilla. Here's another stat for you. So this vanilla extract, the whole beans that we've used, at the end of this process, we can use them again,
Right.
and we can use them, I think, 5 times over. So
Wow.
that's pretty cool. And then at the end of that cycle, you can take the vanilla beans that have been soaked for this period of time, and you can make them into vanilla powder.
Mm.
Like it's an amazing spice.
And we're trying to use every piece of it, right? Like with our children, we grow other agricultural products other than vanilla, tomatoes, things like that. And we try to use every piece of everything that we grow because we had to grow it from scratch. We had to fundraise and use donor funds to get the farm going. So we want to be good stewards of everything that we're doing. And vanilla is the exact same. Not only are we going to use the vanilla beans again and again until we can't anymore, but we also want to produce our own alcohol. So everything is from Project Canaan, which also creates employment opportunities. So when we think about scaling this over the next few years, one of the initiatives that we foresee is needing some sort of manufacturing facility to be able to produce all of this vanilla products that we've been talking about, as well as the alcohol, but also other products on our property. We have a whole dairy with over 100 milking cows. We have the produce, like I was talking about before, across our farm that we're currently selling in South Africa to some wholesalers. So we will need at some point a facility that's taking care of all this. I think our kitchen, we both agree, is not going to be able to do all of the testing that you've been doing recently. It's not going to be able to do everything. Before we go into questions, one last one for you. What makes us different? So I hear, the market's so big. It sounds really great. Why doesn't everybody do this?
It's tough. We're in touch with a farmer in Mozambique who has had his vanilla planted for 4 years now, and he hasn't had one flower.
Mm.
So, it's the growing conditions, it's the climate, it's having the labor that can go through and hand pollinate and do it right. I just think our environment right now it's a great environment for this. Our climate's great for this, and so having this opportunity to be able to really try this out. And now it is an investment. It's a 4-year investment before you get anything of substantial out of it. So if you're able to put in the time and the resources, then yeah, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to become closer to becoming self-sustainable.
Right. It's also huge from an employment perspective too, because the country that Project Canaan is in, Eswatini, has a 70% unemployment rate. So we have people in our surrounding community that are looking for jobs. We employ many of them, over 450 of them right now. But this operation is only going to grow and grow. And when you consider that each person that works on Project Canaan on average supports 8 people back at home, the ripple effects that we're able to do through this project, Project Canaan, from the jobs that we can create with Vanilla, from the income that we can generate from Vanilla, really opens up a lot of doors for us, for employment, for our kids. It is a hard path. We've learned don't grow it between banana trees. Make sure that there's no water aquifer below your greenhouse when you need to dehydrate vanilla. There's been some big learnings throughout this process, but one thing I commend you and the team on is just like keeping your head up and saying, we're going to keep trying and experimenting and move fast, break things, as they say. So thanks. Yeah. Hey, this was fun. I think there's some questions. Lisa, I don't know if you want to read off one or two, and we can dive in.
Yeah. Here's one question. What is the anticipated date that the vanilla will be ready? And will harvests occur on a rolling basis?
Good question. The harvest will happen once a year, probably over a 6 to 8 week period. We're expecting our first harvest. Well, what we're doing is we're going to force it to flower in November, and then it'll be 9 months. So it'll be sometime late in 2026 when we'll have our first harvest, and it will be cured probably around October of next year.
Right.
But it's only once a year, like for that period of time.
Right.
So it's not an ongoing thing.
And that's a planning piece for us as far as like going to market and being able to sell this stuff. I saw someone comment about being able to buy some vanilla extract. So our plan right now, like my dad was mentioning, is end of next year harvest. So hopefully early 2027, we'll have product available, if not later in 2027. So we have two paths. One is we are looking for wholesale relationships right now. The United States and Europe are the largest consumers of vanilla in the world. So we are looking for people to partner with in the US. But we are also going to be selling retail. We have a shop called Kutsala Artisans. And we will be selling 8-ounce bottles of vanilla for anybody that's interested. So if you're part of this webinar, in 2 years from now, you'll get an email from me that says, we're ready. And you can go through and buy online. And we're excited for that. Lisa, before we go to the next question, I just want to show this. This is a really cool aerial view. Again, a great investment from you, Dad, was getting that drone that you fly all over. Can you just walk us through what we're looking at here and where on the property is this?
Sure. So that's the greenhouse. It's a 1/4 hectare. I think it's like 0.6 of an acre. And the shade net, the green shade net's on the top of it. It is located right beside our pack house. So our pack house, we're Global Gap certified. We got that accreditation last year. And so our pack house is also Global Gap certified. What does that mean? That means companies outside of our country look at our farming practices, and we have international farming practices that we adhere to. So they're confident when they buy stuff from us that we haven't taken any shortcuts, and it's all about traceability. So we're able to know exactly where that product came from, which field, who actually picked it, who planted it, who packed it, all of that. That's all the traceability. But it's sort of in the center of our farm. We've got fields that sort of surround it. Our vermiculture pit is the white block that's just to the right of the screen.
The worm pit, yeah.
The worm pit, where there's a couple million worms eating, digesting, excreting. But that's sort of in the center of the farm. Well, it's not in the center of the farm, but it's
right.
Yeah.
We've been talking about financial sustainability, which is really offsetting the costs of Heart for Africa, our mission. Another pillar of that is social sustainability and environmental sustainability. So the worm pit is another initiative that we've been working on over on the right with millions of worms to help from an environmental perspective. If you're interested in more information on either one of those two pillars, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to share more information. A question here: did Ian learn the skill of distilling moonshine during their time living in Georgia? I know that's not the case because I was there, as far as I know. Can you talk about the class that you did in South Africa?
Yeah, we went on a 2-day class in South Africa where they taught us how to make a wash, and then they had a wash already made, and then they showed us how to ferment, how to put together the still, and how to ferment it. So yeah, no, I'm not experienced in this at all. We are learning. I'm sure there will be challenges, and but we're not using an open flame, so we're okay. We're not going to blow anything up.
No car battery like they used to do?
No car battery. Our washes will be simple. They'll be sugar washes. So this is basically sugar.
What's the input that we're using for alcohol?
We're using just sugar and yeast, and then there's certain ingredients that you put in to help make sure that your yeast is healthy and continues to convert the sugar into alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a whole other course. I mean, we're starting to learn how to do this more and more. So, but at some point we'll be giving courses on it, I'm sure.
Sure. If we have anybody on this call that has experience with home brewing, I guess, and you want to share some information, we would love that because we are in the early stages of this. The still is something, and the alcohol is something that we're working on over the next 6 months. For now, the alcohol that we bought is actually, what was the proof for our experiment? It was, or the percentage?
99.9%. It was ethanol alcohol. Yeah. And what we had to do is we had to cut it so that it wasn't at 99.9%. So what do you do with that? You put distilled water in, and you basically lower it to the alcohol proof you want. So we did an experiment at 60 proof, 50 proof, 40 proof, and 35 proof. And again, we're not distilling alcohol to drink. I wouldn't trust myself with that. But we're doing it specifically for vanilla extract.
Yeah. Well, and it is from all the research we've done, it's better than just buying, off the shelf vodka, which you can do here. I've actually done that myself to make Christmas gifts for people with you just buy the beans. But this stuff should be quite potent and really, really delicious when it's done. And we're going to be doing a lot of taste testings, which I'm looking forward to. Mm. Lisa, do we have time for 1 or 2 more questions? You got any?
Yeah. Here's a question. Because vanilla is such a high value crop and South Africa is known for droughts that can last for years, do you worry about drought as a risk?
I did a few years ago. We have natural springs up at the top of our property that we were able to divert and bring down the water from there. And it's all on the property. And at the end of the day, basically, it makes us water secure. So when we went through our drought in the years 2015 through 2018, those springs were still producing 10,000 liters of water an hour. And so that water will make us water secure. It's not going to give us enough water to irrigate all of our fields, but we will be water secure, and it will be plenty for our greenhouse.
Right. And I realize on this conversation, we have gone back and forth between metric and imperial this whole time, which we do in our conversations all the time. So no, hey, I was doing it too. So I apologize for anybody that hasn't been able to follow, but it's a good skill to have to be able to quickly do it back and forth. No, that's really interesting, Dad. I know when the drought was going on years ago, the water security was a big issue for us. We had fundraised $800,000 US from donors in the United States, Canada, and all over the world to be able to dam up the waterfall, the spring up at the top of our property, and then funnel all of that down into our 3 dams. So we have 3 massive dams on our property that we're able to leverage for agriculture, for our dairy, also for our kids, for consumption, as well as for showering and bathing and all of that too. So the water security piece is really big. I would have to agree, there are risks. Swaziland or Eswatini gets a lot of crazy storms. So I know there's been hail there. There's crazy lightning storms with all of the metal in the earth. So I could see something like that being an issue for us with the greenhouse, but unfortunately we can't predict those things, and the greenhouse is built as best that it could possibly be. So we just need to keep moving forward, and as things come up, solution, and keep going.
Yeah. We do have some extreme weather that comes through here for sure, and we've taken measures to secure ourselves the best we can. Even with the greenhouse with the shade net over it, what that does when hail hits it, it bounces. So it doesn't go through the greenhouse. It's amazing. We had a hailstorm a few years ago that took out all of our fields, but our greenhouse was fine.
Right. Yeah, that's a shame, but these things happen. While we wrap up, Dad, is there anything you want people to know about vanilla? We talked about when it's going to be harvested, when it's going to be available for sold. I know right now we are looking to fundraise for another greenhouse so we can expand our vanilla production. Is there anything you want people to walk away with knowing?
Yeah, our goal as an organization is to become self-sustainable by 2030. And to be able to do that, we will need to build another greenhouse, another quarter-hectare greenhouse, and plant that with vanilla. It'll take 4 years to get that up and going as well, but that's why it's kind of pressing to get it done now, at least get it built. But by 2030, our projections have us self-sustainable. So we won't need to raise any more money for operating costs, but for capital things. Our capital needs will continue well into 2035.
Right. And part of that financial modeling that we've done over the next 10 years for this path to sustainability is, of course, a lot of assumptions around our ability to actually sell this product, right? And so for anybody on the call, if we have anybody that has the capacity to buy tons of vanilla or is interested in learning more about what we're doing, we'd be happy to chat, because that is one piece over the next few years that we want to have figured out. The first harvest that we have is not going to be much, as we've talked about. It's about, again, metric 400 grams per plant. But when we get up to scale by 2030, that's when we really start to see a significant difference on our bottom line for caring for our children because of our vanilla and all of the investments that we made there. So Dad, thank you. I know it's late over there. I want to say thank you for taking the time. Personally, we've worked together on this for the last year or so pretty heavily. And it's been a blast working with you. And I really appreciate the way that you're approaching this every single day, rolling up your sleeves to actually do the testing of vanilla with Mom, which is so fun. I really appreciate all your efforts over there and for all you guys are doing for these kids. At the end of the day, it comes down to what is our mission? It's to fight hunger, care for orphans, decrease poverty, and provide education. And vanilla is one piece to that puzzle that we're trying to do, but we're trying to change the nation here, right? We're trying to change the country of Eswatini and save people and help them. So thank you. For everybody else on the call, 46 people still on here. Thank you for joining us. I would say this was a success, at least for myself. We didn't know how many people would be interested in what we're doing with vanilla. As you can hopefully tell, we're very passionate about it, and we've learned a lot over the last few years. So if you want to have a follow-up conversation, or if you're interested in us coming to talk to your organization about Heart for Africa, we've been doing things called Bites of Insight, which is an opportunity to talk about vanilla, talk about sustainability, and really just fire up your workforce over something cool that's happening somewhere else in the world. Anyway, thank you all for getting this webinar. We will send out the recording, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Spencer. Take care.